Greetings, class, and welcome to the second week of Forming Faith in the Internet World. Last week, you had an assignment that forced you to take stock of your own participation in the digitized and social media mediated world that we find ourselves in, to kind of look inward, if you will, and gauge your participation in it. I've enjoyed reading those surveys, and I look forward to talking to you about that as we continue our work together this semester. This week, I'd like you to look up and out, so to speak. This week's assignment is inspired by Elizabeth Drescher's book, Tweet If You Heart Jesus, Practicing Church in the Digital Reformation. This is a great book, and it's at the top of your recommended reading list. Like so many other texts for this semester, I've debated whether or not to require you to read it, but I thought that a better use of your and our time might be for you to engage the questions and practices that she raises in the book in order to lay groundwork for the rest of the work that you'll do this semester. In her book, Elizabeth argues that we and the church are in the midst of a digital reformation. And contrary to what many of us might think initially, it's not entirely about digital technology alone, the latest smartphone or the latest app, but rather it's also driven by economic and environmental and political, intellectual, and we might even say religious issues. And that taken together, these issues and the ascendancy of digital technology and the rise of social media have resulted in new expressions and modes of access, participation, co-creativity, and distributed authority that radically challenge long-held beliefs and practices across all Christian denominations and all religions themselves, and forcing practitioners, especially of those faiths and leaders in those faiths, to take stock of where we are, how we communicate, how we lead, how we engage. So Elizabeth breaks the digital reformation down into its influences on three areas of religious life: communication, community, and leadership. She argues that being known as a leader in the digital reformation doesn't really depend on where you stand on Sunday, maybe, if you wear a collar, the color of your shirt, or the title, or the letters after your name. But in fact, it depends on your ability now to effectively participate in or to create wider conversational spaces where other people are encouraged to share their own perspectives and feel that sense of belonging and authority that are characteristic of the digital reformation. So as tempting as shiny new devices might be, whether it's the iPhone 8 or X or 10 or whatever you want to call it, she argues that technology is not the answer and how churches better engage the internet world and participate in this digital reformation. They're not the problem. They can be a distraction, but they're not the problem. Getting the right technology, she argues, is not going to save the church from oblivion or irrelevance. Engaging in communication practices that are appropriate to a world shaped by digital media might make the church relevant. She argues that the digital reformation is about orthopraxis, right practice, not orthotechnology, not the right technology. So for Elizabeth, this is about recognizing how communities are changing and how change is happening in communities. She points out that the change is being led by the swarm, not the queen. So no longer can churches and leaders embrace corporate or commercial modes of leadership. She writes, and I'll read this in full. With this in mind, I would suggest that it is not, as a well-known church communication project insists, that church marketing sucks, as much as it is that marketing the church sucks. That is, we are not selling something to the world that will make more people like us believe in our story and join our churches. We are trying to be something in the world that invites connection and compassion, encourages comfort and healing for those in need, and challenges those in power to use that power in the service of justice and love. So as such, leadership practices in the digital reformation are practice-based, focusing on shared resources, traditions, wisdom, kindness, time, justice. that nurture, enhance, and sustain relationships, which in turn gather themselves into community. So while we're in the midst of this digital reformation, while it can be oftentimes feel like we're, a fish in a big ocean, Elizabeth does point out some traits to the nature of communication, community, and leadership in this moment. She argues that all of these must be immediate, transparent, interactive, co-creative, integrative, and distributive. So to be immediate means that we can respond to events in the world around us and in our communities with some speed, some regularity even. Transparent is self-explanatory, feels like. Interactive, does it invite a response? Does it create space for people to give feedback and to participate? Is it co-creative? Are you partnering with people in your communities, or are you just the lone voice in the wilderness? Integrative, how deeply do you engage multiple areas of life and thought? I think of some things of like theology and art, or theology and film, or theology and justice. Are you putting different fields in conversation with each other? And distributive, how easily are you able to share it, right? How you can never be sure that something will go viral, but is it in a place to even be viral? Is it live online, or is it just in a print newsletter in your church or in your context? And Elizabeth points out that this is what good social media does, right? Whether it's a blog, a podcast, a Facebook page, is it's responding to something out in the world rather than something that's just happening in your church on a Sunday or in the business meeting on a Wednesday night. It's not about sending out a message that you have, although that can be important, but it's about connecting to the lived reality of people in your community and around the world and inviting people to share their take on that, whether it be something that's happening in your community or in the world. So she argues that good blogs, for example, feed conversations, which is why true measures of success for blogs and for social media is not how many subscribers they have, although that's important and it certainly gratifies an ego, but how extensively are they shared and redistributed and cited and even purloined, stolen from, right? And so she adds that social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and all these things allow leaders in ministry today to enact this co-creativeness and shared commitment to distributing the gospel. And this is something that characterized communication in the early church communities. But now we can do this in real-time formats that are congenial to today's believers and seekers. And really, for me, this is the most interesting part of Elizabeth's work, is that the reality that many of the characteristics of digital communication aren't new at all. In fact, many of them mirror pre-modern modes of production and consumption of media and text, for example. She provides 3 concise tables that contrast and compare pre-modern, modern, and digital means of communication. And I've shared those with you on the Moodle page, and I invite you to take a look at those and reflect on those as you have time. I think they're very interesting. We can talk about those next week in class. Finally, Elizabeth concludes each chapter of her book with a series of questions that force us to take stock of the context in which we work and the communities in which we live and worship. I've shared most of these questions with you as part of this week's assignment on your Moodle page, I think under the title Survey Your Landscape. You'll see that these questions are numerous and deep, and while I don't expect you to answer every single question or to address all of them with the same depth or focus, I want you to take them seriously because I think they're important. So, on to this week's assignment. It's threefold. First, take the time to really dig into those questions in the Survey Your Landscape page on Moodle. Engage colleagues and community members if need be for their reactions and their take on those questions, their perspectives. Answer those questions in either essay or survey form and give some thoughtful responses if you can, more than one sentence please. And send those to me by Friday the 13th. Second, do some research outside your own context. Look beyond your own location and find similar communities, individuals, or organizations, be they nonprofits or churches, whatever. How are they participating in the internet world and or engaging social media? You might do this in a number of ways, be it through conversations with colleagues, online research into blogs and websites, or a survey of social media landscapes. Take note of the communities, organizations, and individuals that are inspiring to you, that seem to be actively engaged in these spaces. And, on the other hand, take note of organizations that just don't seem to get it at all. Maybe they have an awful web presence. Maybe their website is Comic Sans, and it doesn't look like it's been updated in a decade. Select 3 or 4 of those positive, inspiring examples, and then select maybe 2 or 3 of the ones that are kind of cringeworthy. Finally, I'd like for you to take all of this information and create a presentation that bridges week 1 and week 2. I'd like for you to put your digital network self-survey in conversation with this survey your landscape assignment and those questions for this week. Think about your interests, strengths, and challenges when it comes to your participation in the internet world. What are the interests, strengths, and challenges of your community and context? How can you pair those together to create something new and special? You can present this project, you can offer up this presentation when we're together in class in any way you want to. Maybe a keynote or a PowerPoint would be best, so you can provide links to web pages or social media accounts. So it'd be easy for us to see together and have those conversations together. If you want to create a video or a lecture, any way you choose to do this is fine, but keep in mind using means to share images and to share examples for us. So that's it for this week. Look forward to seeing you next week on campus to continue to dig into some of these topics and these questions together to find out where you are in the comfort level with this stuff and beginning to map out the rest of the semester together. That way we can, again, get the most out of our time together in this course. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or Facebook me, Twitter, whatever. We can set up a time to chat about that as well. Thanks.